here at Tile and Stone Journal, and today I'm speaking about sustainability in the tiling industry with David Kong, Director of Domus Tiles and Chair of the Sustainability Working Group at the Tile Association. How are you doing today, David?
Hello there. I'm good, thanks.
Great,
Thanks for the intro.
no problem. So I think if you're happy, we can just get straight into the question and answer. Um,
Okay.
so first off, I wanted to ask, over the last sort of 5, 10 years or so, what kind of progress do you think has been made with regards to sustainability in the tiling industry?
Yeah, so in the industry, I think there's a lot has been made in terms of progress. I'm looking at the whole value chain or the cycle of tiles from raw materials to being installed into a project to being stripped out and sent off to recycling or landfill. We can look at all those different elements and see progress and innovation in them. But I kind of things that stand out for me in the last 5, 10 years are the tile manufacturers who have innovated and produced larger tiles and thinner tiles. In terms of thinner tiles, they're lighter weight. They still have great performance in terms of durability and fireproofness and frost resistance and so on. But in essence, you're using less raw materials. You're using less energy to make them, and then when you're transporting them, you're using less fuels to transport them about on a lorry and so on. So in other words, in a lorry, you basically get more square meterage. So I'd say that's one of the major innovations that happened in the last 5, 10 years. I think in terms of the manufacturing, I'm always focused on the manufacturers, but there's lots of other things. But it's partly because they're the industrial makers. They've got the big kilns. Their kilns are predominantly um, fired with natural gas. Obviously, there's electric and renewables and so on. But predominantly, um, it's gas. So some of the big things that they've done, there's the I kind of think it's obvious, but this is really offsetting where they have lots of property and lots of real estate, and so they've covered it with acres of photovoltaics, PV solar panels. They've invested millions of pounds in that, and of course, generating their own renewable energy. And usually, this energy is not necessarily powering the kilns, but it's powering absolutely everything else: all the motors, all the crushers, the electric motors. I'm thinking of, and then of course all the offices and warehousing and the lighting and the heating and so on. So that's a huge step forward and a big investment in them. In terms of the manufacturing, again, some of the leading tile manufacturers have cogeneration energy plants. They're taking the waste energy or the heat that comes from the kilns. It doesn't go into the atmosphere and gets lost. It's processed through the cogeneration plants, which essentially remake new energy. So the energy isn't lost, and I think that's a great thing. Something a little sort of less sort of tangible, but I think it's really, really important is that all the manufacturers, or nearly all the tile manufacturers, have now produced EPDs individually or as a group. It's a great start. It absolutely starts to deal with all the ambiguity or the opinions that are not based on any data or science. And of course, we can all have a good old crack at the data and science, but it's a good, brilliant starting point. So here we are. We are able to see the environmental impacts, the environmental emissions, and we can see them measured by the kilogram. So we've got global warming potential, we've got acid rain, we've got leaching into riverways, and we've got what's the other one? CFC. So we can see all that data. We can see that where the emissions are heavy, and of course that allows the industry, or in particular the manufacturers, to focus on improving those things. So I think that's a huge leap forward and something that's very important in terms of progress. Uh, Behind the scenes, you see lots of factories getting environmental standards, certifications, and certificates like ISO 14001. We like that because that is the start of an environmental process where they're measuring things, they're putting improvement strategies in place. We like to see the factories publish their annual sustainability reports so they can be transparent about what they aim to do and what they have achieved or what they've got behind on. And that's all very good. And it's good to be able to understand that and then communicate that to our customers, our audience, and so on. I think some of the new things that are coming through is looking at how we can make tiles using not just pre-production recycled content,
Hmm.
but post-production recycled content. I mean, the chemists would say you can't do it, and they're probably right because you're turning clay into porcelain. You've already done the job, so how can you turn porcelain back into clay? But it's not necessarily that process, but it's looking at innovative uses of waste materials, and there are companies that are using or turning recycling plastic bottles into tiles and mixing them with composites or crushed stone.
Sure.
So these are things that are coming through. And it's interesting how I remember 10, 12 years ago, there was a company who was doing this. It wasn't on the agenda. The product wasn't aesthetically fantastic, and they kind of petered away quietly. Whereas now, certainly in the last 3 years, it is top of the agenda and sort of a hot subject. And I hope they sort of get a bounce back.
Yeah.
So that's sort of progress in the last 10 years, a sort of highlight. Um, in the sort of the construction industry, in its sustainability as a process, I think it's about informing those people. So there's all the various stakeholders that are in the process. So there's the building owner, there's the developer, there's the money men, and then there's the contractor, and then there's the subcontractor, and then it comes to the tiler. I mean, all these people need to know how we fit into the grand scheme, so that certainly if they're specifying materials from tiles, adhesive, and grouts, they know that they're optimizing or choosing the best performance product with the optimized or the best green standards.
Sure.
And whilst that can all sound opinionated and can sound a bit greenwashy, one can turn to the data, turn to the facts, and justify your decision from those facts. I think I have to remind everyone that tiles, on one level, are very sustainable because of their long life cycle, their durability. They kind of last forever, but you can't really say that. So in the EPD, it's sort of scientifically sort of put through some equation, the life cycle assessment, and the general number is around about 60 years. So that's a very good thing. We've already mentioned fireproof and waterproofness. And that, and if you compare it to any wood product, of course, wood products are going to be generically good because essentially they're carbon stores. So you could say, in terms of a wall covering or floor covering, there's your benchmark to try and compete with. Having said that, we know that wood has completely different characteristics, other than you can put it on a floor and wall.
Sure.
So some of the construction industry things, I think this is where we turn to not just information, we turn to the things such as efficient transportation. So this is about moving heavy industrial goods around and trying to have a light carbon footprint. It's really about having efficient diesel lorries at the moment. We hope that we can turn that into electric lorries, but the timescales on that are not that visible. I think we should be always questioning whether it's better to ship large volumes by sea, because you can get more in a boat, and as long as they're using nice fossil fuels, or you get it on a train and you have the big commercial freight carriers, and then eventually it gets into a lorry and then comes to the manufacturers or the warehouses and or to the retailers and eventually to site. So that's a sort of a big thing in terms of the construction industry. So that's transportation. And then the other thing, which is a big issue, is waste. So we all know that when we're selling tiles, we kind of ask everyone to put another 10% on their order. And we call it, yeah, because something might go pear-shaped. You've got to cut around the corners. You might break some, and you don't want to be waiting 4 or 6 weeks to get a replacement. And so then the question is, well, what do you do with all the broken bits, and what do you do with the stuff that you didn't use? And this is where the industry needs to pull together and find a better way. I think the tilers need to start to be clear about the amount of waste they're producing, and then the amount of tiles they've got left over, which could be reused. And then the question is, what are you doing with the waste? And is there something that we can help with in terms of giving guidelines or trying to bring some sort of central system together? So that's a big thing. And we've got to kind of measure it all.
Yeah.
Sort of how many tons do we know? We know that in principle, the market is for manufacturing selling price is about, let's say, around about 4 million, just under 400 million. So manufacturing selling price at 400 million per year. We can do a rough cigarette packet calculation in terms of square meterage. And if you take 10% is your waste, and actually you do waste 5%, we've got a kind of tonnage, and it's a lot of tons. So that is something that the industry could focus on as well. So I'd say that's a sort of highlight in the construction industry as a
Sure.
broad thought. Just looking for fixers and contractors, I think that's the same thing in terms of the construction industry. It's about waste. It's about knowing what products you're putting on and feeling confident they have good green credentials. And they're the ones that can drive through the sort of does the designing out the waste.
Yeah.
So they can kind of prepare the layouts and already work out whether certain tiles could be pre-cut and the off-cut is then used somewhere else and that sort of thing. Obviously, you can't always um, contingent for breakages, accidental breakages, and that sort of thing. So that's where I think the fixers and contractors will make a big contribution in terms of sustainability.
Sure.
Um,
So, what would you say the role of the TTA is in this kind of program? Obviously, we've kind of discussed the broader construction industry, what manufacturers are doing, what tilers, what contractors can do. What's a industry body like the TTA able to do, and how are you able to kind of work with contractors to kind of boost these goals?
Well, I suppose if I was to really summarize it quickly, it's really to give the industry or the TTA members a really good understanding of what sustainability means to the industry and to them, and uh, maybe to assist with all the sort of ambiguity of sustainability. It's a massive story. If you start researching into it, people will talk to you about the environmental sustainability, which is the main thing we think about, but then it's impacts on economic sustainability. And then the third one is the social sustainability. I think they call that equity or something like that. And so the three things coming together have to be balanced.
Yeah.
And the fact that they need balance means that it's complicated. So you make one better and something else goes pear-shaped and so on. So it's really helping them understand that, and then but not get too deep in it. So at least they understand the general picture at which we're trying to fit in. And at the end of the day, we are argument's sake is buying and selling or making buying and selling tiles, making and installing tiles, and then what do we do with the leftovers? And then we hear the word circular economy and how we could fit in or part fit into a circular economy. We've got an issue here that tiles really, ceramic and porcelain tiles are really made from a finite resource. Some people will say it's hugely abundant, but it's still finite.
Mm.
So, and the sustainability is always about future generations. So, whilst we consume it all now and have lovely homes with beautiful tiles, I don't know how many generations down the line um, there will be none left. But that will be the politics of it all. So it's just trying to paint that picture. I think it's quite straightforward, the industry picture, because we just start at, you know, or work backwards. Well, we've got a tile and we work all the way backwards to the raw material. And then if we can put recycled raw material into that cycle, as well as taking the demolition and the strip out material and trying to turn it into something. It'd be nice if it was turned into tiles, then it's an easy story. At the moment, it is recycled.
Yeah.
That's a good story. Tiles are non-toxic. They're inert. If they're crushed, they can be used as aggregate. So that's a big tick. However, that still uses energy to create that sort of thing, and that needs to be thought through. So whilst we can say it's a great thing, it's not that great if we use tons of energy.
Sure.
So I think from a TTA point of view, it's about informing our members, giving them a really good, clear picture, and then which is full of data and integrity.
Yeah.
And then secondly, it's about giving them advice, really good advice, giving them good guidelines. If you're new to this sustainability world, then here are some sort of actionable things you can just crack on and do. Just even office things like the obvious ones, which will be energy consumption in your office, obviously LEDs and heating and air conditioning. And then, so the easiest one is go by renewable energy.
Yeah.
Do you know the difference in costs? Can your business sustain that cost? Then we've got business miles. Of course, we know that flying is the biggest consumer
Mm-hmm.
or producer of CO2. Big question mark is whether you can be more efficient with that travel process. And then the other one, which is just let's call it office waste. We just produce lots of business waste in all forms of shapes and sizes, from metal, wood, plastic, cardboard, tiles, stone, food waste. I just watch our showrooms and see how tough it's been to convert everyone to clean up their food waste,
Mm-hmm.
so that the vessel or whatever the thing was in can go in the right disposable track. And then again, it's about measuring. It is effort, even waste, knowing the tonnage that's going to landfill and the tonnage that's going to recycle. And of course, once you know that, then you can start to think about improving it. Um, and and I think if we're all doing our bit, um, and then hopefully that will start to reduce some of our challenges ahead.
Sure.
Certainly, it's about, and again, about helping people identify what the priorities are
Yeah.
and identify what they can do as a business, as an individual, and so on.
Great. Yeah. That does sound like a pretty good role for the TTA to play in that process. And kind of taking that as our set of guidelines and principles, what are your sort of ambitions? And obviously, this is quite a broad question, but if you could be optimistic, I suppose, what are our ambitions as an industry over the next 5, 10, however many years that you're kind of looking at to improve our sustainability? What do you imagine the industry looking like in 10, 20 years?
Well, I'd like to be realistic,
Yeah.
and so the realism is really about understanding where we are now. So that's the big job that we've got in hand at the moment. So we've got some numbers, we've got sort of rough calculations. I think we want to make sure that they're a bit more detailed and they've got more integrity. I think we'll find that there are certain areas of the industry which are big consumers and therefore, or big consumers of energy and therefore big producers of carbon dioxide. And so those really should be the focus because they can make big small percentages of big numbers.
Sure.
And either you're persuading them to do it, or you've got the clever people doing it on the ground and changing those things. So I won't put any numbers to it, but I think I put a statement which would be I'd like to be able to think that in 2 or 3 years' time, we're able to demonstrate and communicate a significant difference that our work has done, even if it's just making everyone aware. So
Hmm.
the question is what percentage is everyone? And then it would be great to be able to list all the significant things that have changed, and we can demonstrate a reduction in our environmental emissions and an improvement in sort of lifestyle and also an improvement in our economic position as well.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose it is such a wide ranging issue that kind of has its tendrils in every aspect of not just kind of this sector and this industry, but everywhere. The problem of solving it becomes ever more difficult, ever more kind of far reaching in terms of what people have to do. So it's understandable that you have to kind of give a fairly responsible, realistic answer to a question like that.
Yes, I think in general it's about, well, deal with your own sort of island, your own capsule first.
Get
And
your own
once you
house in
sort of
order.
get your own house in order, and then you can start to spread out, and if you've got the ambition and the power, then, you can go further afield, and I think all the television programs and all that stuff, you suddenly realize just how small a world, a planet it is. We're like a little petri dish, and
Absolutely.
all of us running around making, doing something. I mean,
Yeah, but it's the only planet we've got, so it's
exactly.
as small as it is. Um, but yeah, anyway, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me this morning. And if there's anything else that you feel like we haven't covered, you'd like to kind of address before we kind of wrap up here, I'll give you the space to
Yes, I
speak.
think if people are genuinely interested in the subject and want to know more and want to learn about what things to do and how to do them, then get in touch with the TTA. There is or will be a web page with contact details.
Yeah,
That web page will start to grow in terms of information. The outcome, I think, in 6 months or a year's time will be a, a, a report that will communicate what we've done and give people an insight into what they can do. And I think we'll look at bringing the industry together to present all this and to just discuss sort of innovative ways forward.
great, perfect. Well, yes, I'm sure we can all look forward to that report, which I'm sure will be covered in the magazine in due course as well. Um, but that's fantastic. Thank you very much again,
Thank you.
and I'll let you go. I hope you have a good rest of your day,
Thank you
and
very much.
speak to you soon.
Thank you, Alex. Bye bye.